Welcome back to Booster Therapy in another episode of Commanding Presence. Today we have a special deck tech, a Commander deck tech that sits in the Temur colors. That's right, we're going to play a Xyris, the Writhing Storm, and we're going to play a bunch of wheels. So Xyris, if you don't know what he does, is a 2 colorless green, blue, and red, so Temur, flying 3/5. Whenever an opponent draws a card, except for the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, create a 1/1 green snake creature token. Whenever Xyris the Writhing Storm deals combat damage to a player, you and that player each draw that many cards. So this deck is all about card draw, a little bit of card discard, and making lots of little snakes. If you want to purchase this deck or see the full deck list, there's a link in the description below to our TCG Player affiliate link. It will get you right to the deck and will allow you to purchase it outright if you want it, or at least purchase the pieces. It's up to you, but please make sure you're supporting Booster Therapy when you do it. The first thing we're going to dig into with this deck is the ramp. Ramp is important with every deck, and typically you want to go anywhere from 8 to 12 spells, really depending on the cost of your commander. 5 is a little bit heavier, so we've got a good chunk of ramp here. The first one we have is the wonderful Mana Crypt, the one that's been reprinted twice in 1 year, or will be at least when Double Masters comes out, but a great ramp spell. Thought Vessel, because we're going to be drawing a lot and we don't want our hand size to make us discard. It's not the end of the world when it does. There's some cards that benefit us from it, but getting no maximum hand size and ramping is pretty nice. Cultivate, a standard ramp spell in any ramp package. Farseek, another really good one, especially since it can get us one of our dual lands that has blue or red in the mana cost, which is often something we need to do is fix our mana. Rampant Growth, one of the most efficient and most affordable 2-mana ramp spells out there, very resilient, and if you haven't noticed, this is some of that iconic artwork that is reminiscent of the Japanese art that has the Tidal Wave. I think it is called Tidal Wave. I could be wrong, though. The Dryad of Elysian Grove, not outright ramp. It can if you have the lands in hand. Also fixes it, though. Your lands tap for any color. Soul Ring, and I'll always say this, what would a commander deck be without one? Arcane Signet, another staple, just like Soul Ring. I think at this point any commander deck should have an Arcane Signet in it. Sarkura Tribe Elder, another great 2-mana ramp where you can block, chump block to prevent damage and sacrifice it to ramp yourself. Chromatic Lantern, it ramps, and like the Dryad, it helps fix our colors, so it's a little bit easier to play what we want to play. And finally, Paradise, Birds of Paradise. Hopefully you got the secret layer for this. I think it's, well, the whole thing dropped, but maybe this one's coming up tomorrow. Another great mana ramp spell. It's 1 mana, it taps for any color, it's effective. Next up, we're going to talk about some of our utility creatures within this deck. The first one we're going to have is Gutter Snipe. We're going to be playing a lot of instants and sorceries, and just that little bit of pinging is something that helps us get way ahead in this game. There's a lot of little pinging moments that we have. Gutter Snipe is one of those as we wheel and have fun. Purphoros, another way to ping, is we're creating those 1/1 green snakes over and over again. All of our opponents are taking 2. Purphoros is going to be one of the strongest cards in this deck, and another one that was recently reprinted in Mystery Boosters and really went down quite a bit in price, so it's a little bit more affordable now than it was before. The Locust God, doubling down on the making tokens and using Purphoros to kind of abuse that ability. Locust God is very strong. It stands on its own as a very strong commander card. But if you're trying to have fun and play Xyris and add that green in there to really be efficient in your ramping and getting the mana you need to play all the fun spells, Locust God is an alternative commander, I guess, that some people play. I'd rather go Xyris. It does a similar thing and it's a lot of fun. Niv Mizzet, the Firemind, another little ping. We're going to be drawing a ton of cards, and Niv Mizzet is a great way just to ping down our opponents or any of the targets on the board that are problems for us. The Dual Caster Mage, a nice little utility creature that helps us double down on one of our wheel spells. It's never going to be a bad thing to draw 14 and make people discard 14. We're likely going to make a board state that is next to impossible to deal with. Torrential Gearhulk. You know, a lot of people play Snapcaster Mage, and that's a great card, and there are moments where that's going to be better. I really like Torrential Gearhulk. It's going to avoid the mana cost in most circumstances. This is just going to be stronger in a fun, casual commander game, and it's a little bit more affordable. Toothy, Imaginary Friend. When you're drawing cards, he gets bigger and bigger, and then when he leaves the battlefield, you're drawing more cards, so he's just a difficult situation, you're either going to have this giant monstrosity, or if they remove it, you're just going to replace it with a ton of snakes if you have Xyris out. And of course, Toothy would be lost without his friend Pier, giving us that little bit of hardened scale so we can double down those counters a bit and tutor up another creature, so kind of like a draw. Riel the Everwise, another one of the new cards from Ikoria. This one's going to be great because it's going to get bigger as we cast a lot of our instants and sorceries, but also when we discard, we draw cards. So wheeling is drawing us that many more cards. It's making us that many more snakes, a staple for this deck. The Psychosis Crawler, another little of that pinging damage. As we draw cards, we deal 1 damage to each opponent. This guy also sits to be pretty big as you keep your hand size full. Rajmi, Eternity's Crafter. This one lets us cast our first spell. When we cast our first spell each turn, we reveal the top card, and if it's a non-land with a converted mana cost less than that spell, we cast it without paying it. So it gives us a bit of that cascade mechanic with everything we do, and just helping us to do more in a turn, or at least draw cards. And Seedborn Muse. This way we can keep our mana up and keep our counter spells handy, so when people try to disrupt our board or hit us with board wipes, we've got an answer for them, and we can stop them from doing that. The next thing we're going to talk about is the card draw with this deck. There is a lot of card draw. There's going to be 2 forms of it. There are going to be wheels, because this is definitely a deck that wants wheels, but also just some of that standard drawing of cards. Teferi's Puzzle Box is a good one because we're not super concerned with what answers we're drawing. We just want to get Xyris out and draw, and this one really helps to disrupt what our opponents are doing, and it also draws an entire hand. So again, when it comes to making those snakes, first we're helping our opponents because we're letting them draw all sorts of cards. So nice of you. You are a friend in this game, but it's making us a ton of snakes. Geth's Grimoire. As we inevitably wheel our opponents, we're going to get to benefit from that and draw cards. When an opponent discards a card, we get to draw that many. Skull Clamp, we're going to have a lot of 1/1s. Skull Clamp is just a wildly efficient card. We can sacrifice a 1/1 for a mana, basically, to draw 2 cards. Always a positive for us. Dictative Crewfix, it's an ability to flash in a Howling Mine mechanic where everybody gets to draw an additional card, and it gives us an extra snake a turn, basically, for our opponents. Fevered Visions is the same thing. It gets us to draw extra cards, but it also can ping our opponents, which is super effective, especially when we're doing these little points of damage all along the way. Long-term plans, I included this in the card draw because we're going to be drawing so much. This is just setting our deck up for success in the future. Long-term plans is a great tutor card in a couple colors that don't really have effective tutors outside of Gamble. Rhystic Study, another one that was recently reprinted, but for some reason the price really didn't go down that much. Not for some reason, it's because it's a fantastic card, and it is more card draw for us. If you're playing blue, play Rhystic Study when you can. Curiosity, it lets us draw more with Xyris or whatever creature we attach it to. Another fun fact, if we attach this to Niv Mizzet, it can go infinite, and we can draw through our deck, and if that's enough cards to kill our opponents, we're going to do it. Kami of the Crescent Moon, another great Howling Mine mechanic. 2 mana for a 1/3. It lets everybody draw an extra card and hopefully makes us some snakes. And Font of Mythos, the double Howling Mine card to just draw that much more. For everybody, because we're friends in this game. Remember that. Next up, we're going to talk through our wheels in this deck. This deck loves to play wheels. Riel, Locust Scout, and Xyris all are big fans. So the first one we have is Wheel of Fate. It's the slow wheel. We suspend it for 2, and eventually it kicks in and does a full wheel effect for us after 4 turns. Days Undoing. Each player shuffles his or her hand and graveyard into his or her library and then draws 7 cards. So another great wheel mechanic to hopefully make 21 little snakes. Time Spiral, kind of similar idea. Everybody shuffles everything up. We draw 7 cards, but we also get to untap our lands. The Molten Psyche. Each player shuffles the cards from his or her hand into their library and draws that many. So it gives us a chance to, again, wheel and not probably as resiliently make 21 snakes, but it's going to make us a lot. Wheel and Deal. Any number of target opponents each discard their hands and draw 7, so we're wheeling our opponents, which again, that's our goal. We don't necessarily have to wheel ourselves to be successful with this deck. We need to wheel our opponents. Windfall, another good wheel mechanic. The most budget, affordable wheel, I think, in the game right now for a 3 mana cost wheel. So this is going to be a great price for a deck, especially if you're trying to work it in on a budget. Wheel of Fortune. This is the best wheel in the game. It is the wheel. And it is not budget friendly. Actually, if you've been watching this card, it went from like a $50 to $60 card to like a $150 card or something crazy like that. So if you're working on a budget, this isn't for you, but this card is crazy good and it definitely belongs into the Xyris deck. Winds of Change, one that a lot of people don't know about, another one that's pretty affordable. Each player shuffles his or her hand into his or her library, then draws a new hand for as many cards as he or she had before. So for 1 mana, everybody's shuffling their hand in and then drawing that many cards. It's crazy good. Echo of Eons, we get 2 hits out of this one. This one does the same thing as Time Spiral, but it doesn't help us untap our lands. And then Reforge the Soul, the Miracle wheel effect. Otherwise, it's a 5 mana wheel, which in itself isn't terrible. 5 mana to draw 7 cards and give us hopefully 21 wonderful, wiggling little snakes. Next, we're going to talk through some of our utility spells, our removal spells, just the things that help us stay resilient and hopefully protect our board state. The first one is Desertion. It's just a fun spell. This is kind of a pet card for me. I also love the artwork. But you counter target spell. If it's an artifact or creature, you get to steal it from them. It's just a lot of fun to play. It's always fun to steal somebody's, powerful, you name it, Aetherflux reservoir, whatever it is. It just takes that artifact or creature and puts it onto your battlefield. Arcane Denial, especially when you're playing 3 colors, it's harder to hit that double blue, which is what a lot of counter spells want. Arcane Denial, very effective. And again, we make an opponent draw 2 cards. That is positive for us because we make 2 snakes. Mystic Confluence, one of my favorite counter spells when it comes to counter spells you play in Commander. I love having so much utility in one card. I love being able to pick 3 modes and you can pick the same one more than once. Just a very powerful spell. Bribery. So if we've got somebody who's playing a Reanimator deck or an Animar deck trying to ramp into gigantic creatures, we can take one from them for 5 mana and have a lot of fun. If you're playing blue, play Bribery. Crowsand Grip, split-second answer to those artifact and enchantment spells. So if somebody's got Dictate of Erebos, Dictate of Erebos, Grave Pact, that type of mechanic, or if it's the Aetherflux Reservoir, it's trying to get in front of those ones that at instant speed they could really ruin our board state or end us in this game. Crowsand Grip is just a fantastic answer because it has that split second. Disallow, countering a spell or activated or triggered ability. Very powerful counter spell, one of my favorites when it comes to cards to play in Commander. Chaos Warp, an effective removal spell. As long as they're not lucky and it throws a little bit of chaos in what you're doing. Force of Negation, it's always fun to have a free counter spell. Force of Negation, Force of Will, both very powerful spells if you want to play them. Reap the Past, one that people don't give enough love to. This is a crazy good card when it comes to refilling some of those positive permanents. We're going to have a pretty full graveyard, so that randomness is definitely going to hurt us in moments, but Reap the Past, still a wildly effective card. And then the final one is Deflecting Swat, one of the new ones from Commander 2020. We can cast it for free and we can redirect targets. Very powerful spell. I love this new cycle of free cards that was printed in Commander 2020. They are a lot of fun and they are really effective. Now we're going to talk about a few key spells. We need to protect Xyris. We get Xyris out there. He needs to stay alive if we want to be effective in playing this game and wheeling people. He is really the key to our success. So we want to have a few different artifacts in here that really help to protect him outside of the counter spells that we'll use to protect him as well. The first one is Lightning Greaves, and it's one of the strongest spells in general that you can have in a deck that is very creature focused or commander focused. It's very easy to play, it's very effective, it's 0 to equip, and it just straight up protects our commander. Swiftfoot Boots, it's the same thing, except it's just 1 mana to equip. The upside is it's hexproof instead of Shroud. Not that that really matters to us. Shroud is just going to be better when it's 0 to equip it, but it's doubling down on a similar mechanic. The same is Whisper Silk Cloak. We get an added benefit with this one, though, is that we get to be unblockable. Part of Xyris' fun is that we want to hit players. Flying is a great evasion way to evade that he has, but unblockable is even better. It makes sure that we're always clipping in and getting that card draw. Next, we have some of our double spells. So when you're making tokens, there's 3 cards. Well, there's really 4, but we're not playing white, so we don't get to play that one. There are 3 cards that are cards you should always be playing when it comes to a token deck. First one is Doubling Season. Doubles all of the tokens we create. Parallel Lives, it doubles all of the tokens we get to create. and Primal Vigor. All three of these, for all intents and purposes in this deck, do the same thing. They are doubling the amount of tokens, and 2 of them double counters, which could help out with like Peer and Toothy and a few other things. But overall, we're looking at doubling the tokens. So when we make 21 tokens, we're making 42 tokens, and we're making a board state that can swing and take out one opponent at a time. The last bit we want to talk about, because the lands, I mean, I have the lands here again, not really going to go in it, but check the deck list. I've got the link in the description. It will help you look it up if you want to. But land base, building an effective land base, super important. So make sure you're taking your time with that. When you're playing 3 colors, you definitely want to up the dual land intake. But what we're going to talk about next is our finishers. There's 4 finishers in here that all work in different ways. The first one is a way that we have already kind of talked about, and that's pinging. Impact Tremors really just helps us to push that Perforos mechanic. It's letting those tokens deal an additional amount of damage. It's also not equally as hard, but it's still pretty tough to remove. It's an enchantment, so you need enchantment removal, which isn't as common as creature removal or artifact removal. It exists, but not as much, not quite as resilient as Perforos, but it's 2 mana, so we can get this out there really early, and it really does finish your opponents. The next one is Expropriate. We're playing blue. We're going to get ramping into big mana. Games can go on long. Expropriate is definitely the nail in the coffin if we need to push ourselves ahead, get those extra turns, and really just kind of smash in with Xyris and his snakes. Next up is Beastmaster's Ascension. So let's say we even have a mildly unsuccessful wheel where it only has us create 10 snakes, which honestly, I mean, you're almost always making more than that. But let's say we make 10. The second that those 10 are declared as attackers, the quest counters hit on Beastmaster Ascension. It gives them all +5/+5. So now we are attacking with 10 6/6s, doing 60 damage in any direction we want to. It's a great card for a deck like this. And the last one is always my favorite, Triumph of the Hordes. +1/+1, trample and infect. When you have 20 or 30 insects out, or insects, well, it could be insects or snakes out there, to make them 2/2s infect and trample basically wins you the game. So it's just a very effective finisher for only 4 mana. And with its recent reprint and mystery boosters, it is pretty affordable right now. It's worth the price to pick up a few of these. It's a great finisher when it comes to Commander, and one I would recommend putting in a lot of decks that feature creatures or tokens as far as the win condition goes. And that is Xyris, the Writhing Storm, or at least my take on it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did like this video, if you're enjoying the Commanding Presence series, please make sure you hit that thumbs up on the way out. Ringing our bell, being a subscriber, these are things that do truly help us. They help us to get out in the world a little bit more. They help to build the credibility to what we're hopefully and trying to do with everybody, which is engage with the Magic community in a very positive way, having a lot of fun with Commander, with deck techs in general, streaming a little bit, and opening fun Magic products, you know, across the board. More of that to come later. Oh, look at that, a bunch of promo packs. There's so many cool things that we're hoping to do in the future days. Until next time, this is Booster Therapy. This is another episode of Commanding Presence, and you have a wonderful rest of your week.